I was pleased with myself as I pulled out my new identification documents, credit card, and cash from the safe deposit box I had set up 9 months ago in anticipation of what happened. Although I was pleased, I didn't pat myself on the back because that's what I expected of myself. You see, for better or worse, I am a genius. The test showed that my IQ was 180, but I tried not to excel at it too much. Being a genius was, in my opinion, my best and worst characteristic since childhood. By my 5th birthday, I already had the vocabulary of a graduate student. My favorite nursery rhyme was my own version of Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star. Twinkle, twinkle, life-giving ball, I wish I could understand your specific nature. Floating sublimely in ethereal space, strongly reminiscent of a carbon-containing gemstone. Because of my intellectual attitude bordering on arrogance, I was not very well liked in elementary school, especially since I moved forward 2 or 3 years until the other children realized that I had the sense to get back at them, and I didn't have an inner voice suggestive me if anything is out of scope. Anyway, I was now Brad Gensler, with a driver's license and a letter of recommendation from a previous employer. Although I had earned a master's degree in physics by the age of 16, I developed an interest in working with my hands and discovered that I had a talent for working exotic materials to within 1,000th of a centimeter. For example, they don't let some clown put threads on a beryllium copper pipe when it costs over $200 a kilo and the threads have to be super precise. I worked as a master mechanic for 2 years, and this would be a good profession to learn now, I thought to myself as I emptied my safe deposit box. A job in physics would be too prestigious. With my new identity and a one-day audition where I showed what I could do, I quickly landed a job as a master machinist. I found a little apartment, which was more than acceptable, bought a used car, and went in search of the woman. I went to a local bar and got lucky with Sarah. Well, it wasn't really luck because I had a method that rarely failed and was scientifically proven to work. The steps are simple in words, more difficult to implement. Approach, show value, attract, establish rapport, extract benefits. One day, after expressing in a low-key manner that I had impressed Sarah with my humor and intelligence, I turned my back slightly and broke eye contact. When she asked me questions, I seemed reluctant to answer them, and in fact she had to repeat 2 of them because I pretended not to hear them. I spoke slowly. Once she took on the role of pursuer, I acted shy but completely submitted to her, including once giggling, "Is it possible that a girl like you could be interested in me?" Sarah turned out to be perfect. Because I had a piecework job, and because I made decent money just doing my quota, I only had to work about 4 hours a day at my machinist job, more only on special occasions, like when there were urgent projects. This gave me enough time to sign up for 2 different health clubs. Within 2 weeks, I was able to determine the optimal time to exercise at each location and adjust my schedule accordingly. I wasn't looking for pretty faces, although that would certainly be a great bonus. I was looking for someone who obviously had a great body before and who was making a concerted effort to get it back to where it was before. This was my goal for a number of reasons. First, it would give me the opportunity to truly charm and win them over, since I knew exactly how to combine unwavering support and tough love. Secondly, women in this position would be the most accessible. Thirdly, I was most interested in a woman's body first, and then intellect and a pretty face. I had great success at Planet Fitness, meeting 3 amazing prospects within the first 2 weeks. One of them, Connie, was a little overqualified, but since I think I'm better than anyone else, I focused most of my attention on her. Only after constructing the perfect sequence, and, as it seemed to me, with mutual interest on her part, did I find out that she was married. She never wore her rings while training, and one night when we went out for drinks together after training for the first time, she had what looked like wedding bands on her left hand. I asked about them. "Yes, I'm married," she said with a devilish grin, placing her hand on mine. "But I want you to understand that if my attraction to you grows from what is a great start, it will not affect our relationship in any way." This was not what I wanted to hear. Even though I consider myself better than everyone else, What I don't do is date married women. My past doesn't allow me to do that, as does my most moral and unwavering ethical rule: you always keep your word, ISP, when it comes to sex. Although I did not immediately end my date with Connie and acted as normal for the next half hour, I did end it. It's a damn shame, I muttered to myself as we parted. The second woman I only encountered was when I arrived at an odd hour. Her name was Sharon, and she had everything I was looking for without being overqualified. Sharon was recently divorced. She had no children and was 2 years older than me. She was about 5 kilograms overweight and was determined to get back to her optimal weight. Although she had a fairly demanding job, getting in shape and the weight loss that entailed seemed to be her main goal in life. She was also clearly bright, and the fact that her face was completely ordinary didn't bother me at all. I changed my work schedule so I could go to the gym at the same time as Sharon, and soon we became workout partners, and we both adjusted our schedules so that they overlapped perfectly. I encouraged her and complimented her, while at the same time not allowing her to relax when she shouldn't have. I moved into her house 2 weeks later, but only after we both made a commitment to be exclusive. I really enjoyed living with Sharon. She was smart and funny and one of the best partners I've ever had. Plus, within 5 months of us moving in together, her body had reverted to the plasma hot version of its earlier years. This was both good and bad. It was bad because she was getting a lot of male attention, and even worse because she seemed to really be basking in it. Because of my past, I have trust issues. Also, unlike most geniuses, I am sensitive to human emotions and can sense when something is not quite right. Although there was no incident that made me do what I did, I went to the local court and obtained Sharon's divorce case. The divorce was initiated by a verified complaint, which is what divorce begins in our state, although it is called something else in other states, filed by Sharon's ex-husband and not, as she told me, by herself. It alleged adultery and contained enough material, much more detail than one would expect when first filing for divorce, to make me believe it. There were few other documents because the parties reached an agreement shortly after the application was filed. Someone at the courthouse apparently made a mistake and left what should have been a sealed agreement on file. One interesting thing that was found in this document was that Sharon was paying her ex alimony, which she also never told me about. Now that my suspicions were finally confirmed, I installed one GPS tracker on her car and another sewed in the lining of her favorite handbag. When she came to our house at noon 2 Thursdays in a row, I set up a camera in our bedroom. Sharon is a creature of habit, so it was no surprise when the GPS tracker showed that she was at our house the following Thursday at noon. When I remotely activated the camera, it was also no surprise that I saw her cheating with a guy named Jeremy. I knew immediately what I was going to do and that I shouldn't do it, but my history clearly demonstrated that I am hardwired to respond to infidelity. Having taken revenge on her, I was going to leave the city. Driving out of town, I tossed the camera remotes and the spray bottle in a dumpster, abandoned my car in a remote part of the shopping center parking lot where I was sure the security cameras wouldn't pick it up, and walked to the bus station just a kilometer away, and disappeared. 3 weeks have passed since the beginning of my new life. I had just received my new identification documents and was heading to the safe deposit box where I had deposited them along with cash and was about to leave the state. As I walked out of the cheap motel where I was staying to start my new life, I heard a familiar voice say, "Stay where you are, Scott. It's time to go home." I ran. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw 2 stun guns go off. The pain was so severe that I apparently lost consciousness. I woke up in a van franchised houses for mentally ill criminals in a straitjacket. Dr. Patterson saw my eyes open. "I'm sorry we had to scare you, Scott, but I told you to stay put and not break out," she said with her usual sweet smile. "Sorry, Susan," I replied. I never called her doctor, but you know me. "I'm really disappointed that you left us, Scott." People at the university were even more upset. "You really helped them with their esoteric problems in physics that I don't pretend to know anything about. Where is our cheerful human computer?" Dr. Ryan asked me 3 times a week. You know, Susan, I probably would have stayed, but I couldn't find a woman in Sunnyside. I've told you many times, Scott, that there is no prohibition on consensual relationships between patients as long as precautions are taken. Yes, but all patients are not suitable for me, and you will not allow the only nurse who does not look like a cavewoman to sleep with me. Scott, you cannot expect me to allow sexual interactions between staff and patients or to break the law. Well, then what about you, Susan? You're a great fit, but you're not giving me a chance. That last remark was made as much to shock Susan as it was to compliment her, although I knew she was so cool that it probably wouldn't have made any difference. To that, nor to anything else. In fact, she was pretty enough, except that she was married, and you know my prohibition on that, so it was just talk on my part. Oh, Scott, how flattering. You're a good guy, but I'd lose my medical license and my husband, and you wouldn't want that, would you? I could no longer help you cope with the impulses that made you commit murder. Jenna was my ex-wife. I reacted a little more strongly than I did with Sharon and Jeremy when I walked in on Jenna and my brother. If I wasn't a genius and couldn't figure out exactly how to be found insane rather than guilty, I probably would have received a death sentence. Susan began talking about when I could meet with Dr. Douglas Ryan and his team of graduate students, whom I was helping delve deeper into theories about matter and antimatter than ever before. This was something I would never have been allowed to do if I had been sitting in prison. One of the many good reasons why Sunnyside was better than prison. When I came to Sunnyside, something changed. In addition to the increased security, my escape resulted in a new patient that Susan hadn't told me about. Her name was Brittany. Brittany looked stern, like the actress from the movie Women in Prison. But even more noticeable than her rugged appearance was her appearance. I couldn't help but stare at her when I first saw her, hoping she wasn't an idiot like so many of the patients at Sunnyside. "What are you staring at, idiot?" were her first words addressed to me. This might be the best body I've ever seen. I would apologize, but I'm not the least bit sorry. I see it. Maybe we can try a relationship sometime. Hope always burns in the human breast, doesn't it? Thus began my love relationship with Brittany Burns. It turned out that Brittany was a genius too. In fact, and not just figuratively, her IQ was 170. However, we had more in common than that. She was also declared insane after she took revenge on her husband and his mistress. In fact, as far as I could tell, she and I were the only people in the state, at least during the time the records were computerized, who were found not guilty of murder because we were legally insane under a test of irresistible impulse, which is of paramount importance in our state. As an alternative to not knowing the difference between right and wrong, in our state, someone may be found criminally insane if he or she experienced a sudden mental shock called a dissociative reaction, and that dissociative reaction created an intolerable tension that could only be relieved by taking immediate and violent action. In both of our cases, testimony from more than one psychiatrist supported the conclusion that we were legally insane due to this dissociative reaction. That is, we have passed the test of irresistible impulse. Because Brittany and I were the smartest people in Sunnyside staff and patrons, included despite our less than friendly initial verbal exchanges, we gravitate towards each other. I continued to help Dr. Bowles Ryan's team with their antimatter project, and she joined another group at the same university that was analyzing large amounts of social science data. Brittany and I ended up sitting next to each other at every meal, and if we weren't discussing some intellectual topic, I'd propose to her, and she would alternately turn me on and confuse me. One day at dinner, they were throwing a party for one of the patients, and the centerpieces were fake chess pieces. They also served cherry pie for dessert. The last one wasn't anything unusual, but it was the first time I noticed that Brittany actually ate the pie. I usually ate it, but I didn't really like it. I just wanted something sweet. An idea came to my mind. I left my pie next to me while everyone else ate theirs. Brittany finished before anyone else. I saw that she was looking at mine. "Are you going to eat your pie, Scott?" she asked. She never called me Scott unless she wanted something. Depending on her mood or situation, it was usually dude, jerk. I think I'll just throw it away, I giggled. Then give it to me, she said, licking her lips and holding out her hand for him. I picked it up and moved it away from her. No way in hell. This is mine, and if I want to throw it away, I will, I replied with a truly devilish smile. Okay, what do you want? She snapped, crossing her arms over her chest. I want you to play chess with me, and if you lose, we'll sleep. She looked at me for a long time. Then a smile appeared on her face that rivaled mine in its devilishness. Fine. We'll play after dinner, and if you win, we'll sleep together tomorrow. Agreed, she said, holding out her hand. We agreed, I replied, shaking her hand. My pie was eaten in exactly 30 seconds. She looked at me the entire time she was devouring it. After the patient accepted the gift from the staff, and everyone sang, "It's your birthday song. It doesn't last too long." Hey! In Sunnyside, they don't sing "Happy Birthday" for fear of copyright infringement, although I have told them many times that it is not infringed by the performance. Brittany and I retired to play chess. I never lose at chess. I mean never. She cleared my mind. Saying, "Checkmate," she knocked over my king, stood up and said, "Better luck next time," and slowly walked away. I chalked up my loss to being too excited at the prospect of being with Brittany. When I played her the next 3 nights of cherry pie, luckily they served it every 5 days. The chef enjoys cooking and most patients enjoy it. I was really upset. The next time the pie was served, I decided to show my annoyance. After Brittany devoured her pie, she reached for mine. "No, take your hands off. I'm going to eat it tonight." "What's the matter? Do you know that your little brain center can't compete with mine and can't lose at chess again to a higher intelligence?" She giggled. "You must be cheating, but I just don't know how," I giggled in response. "Besides, you probably wouldn't make a good lover anyway." "I'll tell you what," Brittany replied, still not taking her eyes off the pie. "I'll give you a 2-pawn advantage, and I promise that this will be the most luxurious evening you've ever had in your life, with the remote chance that you will win." "Okay," I replied, extending my hand. She shook it, grabbed the pie, and ate it straight from the dish without even using a utensil, and grinned. I truly believe that Brittany would have beaten me even with a 2-pawn advantage, but a smart ass like me sensed that she was losing the game. She must have been just as interested as I was, because she stayed in Sunnyside for 4 months and didn't sleep with anyone. When I shouted, "Checkmate," she giggled. "Okay, I guess that's what I'll have to do to you, no matter how unpleasant it may be for me." "When and where tomorrow?" I asked joyfully, rubbing my hands in anticipation. We met and fulfilled our agreement. We were both late for our Skype sessions, but no one made a big deal about it. We didn't talk much that night at dinner. Then we went to pretend we were playing chess, but really wanted to talk about what happened. "Brittany, you are light years superior," I muttered, moving my white pawn to open the game. "I'm not going to give you my usual bullshit, Scott," she muttered in response, moving her pawn towards mine. "We need to get together." "We'll visit Susan first thing tomorrow morning," I replied, moving the elephant. We made an appointment with Susan for mid-morning the next morning, and we both apologized for not Skyping with our university colleagues. "What's the matter?" Dr. Patterson asked, motioning for us to sit in the chairs opposite her desk. Brittany didn't mince words. "Scott and I want to be together. We need to set aside an hour of our time with the university teams every weekday to retreat to one of our rooms and leave therapy for an hour every weekend. Either that or we need to be able to share a room." Susan didn't miss a beat. She obviously expected this. "So you finally found someone worthy here, huh, Scott?" She grinned. "Much more worthy," I growled. "Fine. These are the precautions you must agree to," she said, handing the document to each of us. "Sign below." Brittany and I are both fast readers, plus I had already memorized the document from previous investigations, so we signed it in no time. "Great. That solves the problem," Susan said. "However, I won't allow either of you to miss varsity meetings or therapy, so I will make arrangements for you to move in together. An obese patient in Ward B4 with a double bed is discharged on Sunday. On Monday, you can leave your chambers and move there, she answered casually, Susan. What will we do until then? Brittany asked. You've gone without this for months. Surely you can last another 3 days, can't you? She giggled. Brittany was about to leave, but I knew a good thing when I saw it and quickly diffused the situation. I jumped up, stood between Brittany and Susan, and said sincerely, "Thank you so much, Susan. Now I don't have to dream about this with you every night." Susan giggled. Brittany looked like she wanted to say something, but I ushered her out the door, then turned, smiled, and waved to Susan. I wanted to find a place to stay for the next 3 days. Brittany snapped when I pushed her away. "Don't worry. We have staircase B," I whispered. One day I whispered to Britt, "Do you want to know a secret?" "I want to know everything I can about you," she whispered back. I faked mine dissociative reaction. I learned everything I needed to know about it before plan revenge. "Will this make you leave me?" I said. Brittany laughed for a full minute straight, barely holding back her tears. "What's so funny?" I asked 3 times before she regained her composure. "I did the same," she grinned. I broke into a wide smile. "I think we are made for each other, don't you?" "Hell yes, and as long as we don't cheat on each other, we will live long, loving, happy lives," she replied. "Even if it weren't in our DNA to never cheat," I answered seriously. "Knowing what each of us is capable of would prevent it from ever happening. Let's run away from here, get married, and start our wonderful life together." "Okay," she said with a smile. The increased security since my last escape was easily overcome with the help of information that was obtained for me by one of the graduate students of the university with whom I was dealing, not knowing what it was for, but buying my story about how it could indirectly lead to solving one of the equations we were having difficulty with. On Sunday evening, a week after I received the information I needed, Brittany and I first took a walk around the grounds Sunnyside, and then took a leisurely walk to the nearest town, stole a car, and were at my safety deposit box by the time the bank opened on Monday morning. We got my new ID, cash, and credit card, bought an innocuous used car, and were 3 states away by lunchtime. Once Brittany got her new ID, we got married 3 weeks later with the help of an Elvis impersonator in Las Vegas. 4 years after saying, "I do," we have a calm, stable family life, twin 1-year-old daughters, and are happier than either of us ever thought possible. We just need to make sure we never go back to Sunnyside. Our lives are serene knowing that we will never have to worry about our spouse cheating. I consider my life perfect in every way, except for one thing: every other day Brittany serves this cherry pie recipe for dessert in Sunnyside. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.